If you look at a world map, you will notice something strange. You see countries like France, Germany, Italy, India, and China, each with their defined borders and moderate sizes. And then suddenly, stretching across the entire northern part of Eurasia, there is one enormous block of land that seems almost unreal in scale. It looks as if someone colored nearly half the map in a single shade. That vast expanse is Russia. Today, Russia is the largest country on Earth, covering more than 17 million square kilometers, spanning 11 time zones, and occupying roughly 11% of the world's total land area. It is about 5 times larger than India and nearly twice the size of the United States. Its borders touch Europe in the west, stretch down toward the Caucasus and Central Asia in the south, reach China and North Korea in the east, and extend all the way to the frozen Arctic Ocean in the north. But this massive country was not always this large. There was a time when the land that we now call Russia was not a single unified empire at all. Instead, it was a collection of small Slavic tribes and regional states scattered across forests, rivers, and open plains. These communities were growing naturally, developing trade, culture, and local political systems. There was no giant empire controlling everything, no continental superstate dominating the northern hemisphere. The transformation from scattered tribes into the largest country in the world began with geography, fear, survival, and relentless expansion. To understand how this happened, we must look at the Eurasian steppe, a vast, open grassland corridor that stretches almost uninterrupted from Eastern Europe all the way to China. Unlike regions protected by mountain ranges, dense forests, or deserts, this corridor is mostly flat and open. It is like a natural highway across continents, allowing armies to travel quickly with few obstacles. For centuries, this openness was both an opportunity and a deadly weakness. In the 13th century, that weakness was exposed in the most brutal way possible when the Mongols emerged from Central Asia. The Mongol armies were fast, disciplined, and terrifyingly effective. They moved on horseback across open land with incredible speed, using skilled archers and coordinated tactics to overwhelm their enemies. Kingdoms protected by mountains or natural barriers had some defense, but the flat lands of the Slavic states offered little resistance. The Mongols invaded the lands of the Kiev and Rus, a federation of Slavic territories that would later influence the formation of Russia. Cities were burned, churches destroyed, and entire populations killed or enslaved. Survivors were forced to submit to Mongol rule under what became known as the Golden Horde. This was not just a political defeat. It was a psychological trauma that shaped Russian strategy for centuries. The message was clear: open land meant vulnerability. Flat geography could invite destruction. For generations, the memory of Mongol devastation remained embedded in collective consciousness. During Mongol dominance, trade declined and local rulers paid tribute to distant khans. However, within this system, one city slowly began to rise: Moscow. At first, Moscow was not extraordinary. It was a modest settlement located among forests and rivers, slightly better protected from direct steppe invasion than other cities. Over time, Moscow's princes proved politically shrewd. They cooperated with the Mongols when necessary, collected tribute on their behalf, and gradually accumulated wealth and influence. Moscow's location also helped it benefit from trade, especially the fur trade coming from the northern forests. Fur was extremely valuable in Europe, both as a luxury and as protection against cold climates. As Moscow grew economically stronger, it began absorbing neighboring territories through a mix of diplomacy, marriage alliances, and military force. By the late 15th century, as the Mongol Empire weakened due to internal conflicts and fragmentation, Moscow was powerful enough to challenge Mongol authority. Eventually, it refused to continue paying tribute and asserted independence. The Mongols, already divided and weakened, were unable to re-establish control. This marked a turning point. Moscow emerged as the center of a growing Russian state, but independence did not erase fear. The trauma of invasion remained, and leaders understood that survival required strategic depth. The lesson learned was simple: if flat land allows enemies to invade easily, then expand until natural barriers provide protection. In the 16th century, under Ivan IV, often called Ivan the Terrible, expansion accelerated dramatically. Ivan conquered the Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan, securing control of the Volga River and gaining access to the Caspian Sea. This not only removed immediate threats but also expanded trade routes and economic power. However, Beyond the Ural Mountains to the east lay Siberia, an immense region of forests, rivers, and frozen tundra with sparse populations and scattered tribes. At first glance, Siberia seemed like a harsh, frozen wasteland with little value. But strategically, it represented opportunity and security. By pushing eastward, Russia could create a buffer zone so vast that no enemy could easily cross it. Russian explorers, traders and Cossacks began moving into Siberia, often traveling along river systems that froze in winter and became natural highways of ice. They established forts, extracted fur tribute from indigenous populations, and gradually expanded influence further east. The process was not always peaceful. Resistance was suppressed, and many native groups suffered under expansion. Yet decade after decade, the frontier kept moving. By the 17th century, Russian explorers had reached the Pacific Ocean, transforming the country into a transcontinental empire stretching from Europe to East Asia. Expansion brought not only security but immense natural resources. Siberia was rich in fur, timber, minerals, and later oil and gas. These resources funded further growth and strengthened the state. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Russia continued expanding southward into Central Asia and westward into parts of Eastern Europe. At its height, the Russian Empire extended even beyond the Eurasian mainland. It claimed Alaska in North America, demonstrating how far its influence had spread. However, in 1867, Alaska was sold to the United States. By the early 20th century, after revolutions and political upheaval, the Russian Empire transformed into the Soviet Union, which at its peak controlled even more territory than modern Russia. The Soviet Union became a global superpower during the Cold War, rivaling the United States in military, political, and ideological influence. But in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed due to economic strain, political instability, and nationalist movements within its republics. Several former Soviet states became independent countries, reducing Russia's territorial reach. Even after these losses, however, Russia remained the largest country on Earth. What makes Russia particularly fascinating is not just its size but its diversity. Within its borders exist numerous republics and regions with distinct languages, cultures, and religions. In the northeast lies the Sakha Republic, also known as Yakutia, larger than many countries and known for some of the coldest inhabited places on Earth. Temperatures in winter can drop below -50 degrees Celsius. The people there speak the Yakut language and maintain unique cultural traditions. In the south, regions like Dagestan are home to dozens of ethnic groups and languages, many of them predominantly Muslim. Kaunakia has a strong Buddhist tradition, unique within Europe. Tuva reflects cultural influences from Mongolia and is famous for throat singing. In the north, areas like Karelia and Komi preserve Finno-Ugric languages and traditions. Despite these differences, all are politically part of the Russian Federation. This diversity presents both strength and challenge. On one hand, Russia's enormous territory provides access to vast natural resources, including oil, natural gas, coal, timber, and minerals. It has long coastlines along the Arctic and Pacific Oceans, offering strategic advantages. On the other hand, maintaining infrastructure across such extreme climates is difficult and costly. Roads, railways, pipelines, and power lines must endure harsh winters and remote distances. Political management is equally complex. Governing a country that spans 11 time zones and contains dozens of ethnic identities requires constant balancing of regional interests and central authority. Historically, Russia chose expansion as a solution to insecurity. Instead of relying solely on defensive barriers, it pushed outward until natural geography became its shield. The open steppe that once invited invasion was transformed into strategic depth measured in thousands of kilometers. Yet size alone does not guarantee stability. The collapse of the Soviet Union demonstrated that even vast empires can fragment under pressure. Today, Russia remains a major global power, influential in Europe, Asia, and the Arctic. Its history shows how fear, geography, ambition, and opportunity combine to shape one of the most expansive states in human history. From scattered Slavic tribes vulnerable to Mongol attack to a transcontinental superstate stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean, Russia's story is one of transformation driven by the relentless pursuit of security and strength. Whether such a vast and diverse country can remain unified and stable in the long term remains an open question. But its journey from vulnerability to dominance explains why, when we look at a world map today, That enormous northern landmass stands out so dramatically.